The NFL league meetings are currently going on down in Phoenix, Arizona. Some takeaways from some quotes from John Mara and Joe Schoen, and some thoughts on the latest happenings with the New York Giants. That's coming up next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Welcome to Tuesday. It is Tuesday, March 28th, and we are just rolling right along here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the things that came out of the NFL league meetings, which are underway right now as we speak down in Phoenix, Arizona. So on Monday, Giants co-owner John Mara took a few minutes to speak to the media. Joe Schoen, the general manager, also spoke to the media for a little bit. Still to come, head coach Brian Daboll will be speaking to the media. I believe it's today, actually, as part of the NFC coaches breakfast that they have every they actually do the AFC coaches first, and then they do the NFC coaches the next day with the media. So still plenty more, I'm sure, to come out of the NFL meetings, but some interesting stuff to come out from John Mara and Joe Schoen that we'll talk about. And the topics that we're going to cover include Saquon Barkley, which is a hot topic right now. Also, there were some little nuggets about Leonard Williams, about Odell Beckham Jr., and about the center position. So I'm going to go all over all of that. I'm going to give you my thoughts. And thank you again for tuning in to the Locked On Giants podcast. Hope you enjoy the show today. So let's get started. All right. First up, we got to talk about Saquon Barkley. So Saquon Barkley, according to John Mara, he still would like for Saquon to be a Giant for life. You know, he went on record, and the quotes that the Giants.com had, basically they'd like him to be, an Eli Manning, a Tiki Barber, basically a lifer with the team. And unfortunately, though, the negotiations don't sound like they're really making progress. Joe Schoen basically said that they last spoke to Barkley's agent about 2-3 days ago, and there's really, no standing offer on the table. So it sounds like this is going to be a long, drawn out affair. Hopefully I'm wrong on this, but this is what it sounds like. So some thoughts here about this situation. Mara did confirm that Barkley was not happy with being tagged, which you can't blame him, because, with the franchise tag, the non-exclusive franchise tag, he now basically, he's not going to be able to shop his services around, and no team is really going to come and offer 2 first-round draft picks for him. I mean, if Lamar Jackson of the Ravens is enjoying that kind of offer, Barkley probably isn't going to get that either, and hasn't. The market for running backs also hasn't exactly materialized. I go back to Miles Sanders, who signed a deal with the Panthers, and I think his deal is something like $6 million per year, which is roughly half of what the Giants offered Barkley way back during the bye week, when they had an offer on the table of $12.5 million per year that Barkley turned down. So right now, as things stand, Barkley, if he ends up playing on the franchise tag, which, by the way, the Giants say they're fine with, if that happens, Barkley will have cost himself nearly, between $2.5 and $3 million per year by turning that offer down. So let's kind of talk about, let's see if we can't, connect the dots here with Barkley as to what he's looking for, because that's a question I get a lot. What is he looking for? And Barkley's never come right out and said, oh, I want, X number of millions of dollars per year. He did say, at the end of last year, that he wasn't looking to reset the market price at running back, which means he wasn't looking for more than what Christian McCaffrey is currently earning, $16 million per. So here's how I kind of connect the dots. Ezekiel Elliott of the Cowboys was cut, as we all know, and he was due to earn $15 million per year. So the only other running backs averaging more than the 12 to 12.5 million range that Barkley was being slotted for are Alvin Kamara, who's averaging about 15 a year, and Christian McCaffrey, 16 million a year. My gut feeling says that Barkley is looking to get something in the range of Alvin Kamara, given how Kamara is used, by the Saints and how Barkley is usually deployed by the Giants. So that's my gut feeling. My other gut feeling is that the Giants don't want to go more than 13 million with Barkley per year. So if that is the case, we have this stalemate. All right. So the two sides are off by, assuming that the Giants, that is, haven't pulled back their offer of 12.5 million per year, which I don't think they have. I don't know that for sure, but I don't think that's the case. So they're off by a few $1 million. And ultimately, somebody's going to have to bend because, the stalemate, it's going to have to come to an end. So what do I think is going to happen? Well, the obvious question is, will Barkley hold out? And the offseason program is set to begin on April 17th. Those dates were released by the NFL. So the Giants offseason conditioning program starts on the 17th. I would not be shocked if Barkley skips the offseason program. I would not be shocked if Barkley doesn't show up for the OTAs. I would not be surprised if Barkley waits and, absent getting a new deal, does not sign that new deal until the deadline, which is around mid-July. Right? It sounds to me like neither side wants to budge. And if you're Barkley, looking at it from Barkley's perspective, you don't want to come in and, God forbid, risk an injury, because if you do, that's a problem. So, yes, there's a chance that Barkley could potentially get hurt working out on his own, but then that's the risk he takes. So if you're Barkley, you hold out and you wait for something to break. Now, here's the thing, though. The Giants don't have a lot of money as of this recording. Over the Cap has them with less than $600,000 in effective cap space, and about, I want to say, 3.5 or 3.7 million total cap space. So absent the Giants doing something with the cap to clear more space, which they're going to have to do, and we'll talk about that a little later on in the show, nothing's getting done anytime soon. Yes, they would potentially stand to lower the 10 million franchise tag amount if Barkley were to agree to a new deal, but I can't see it getting lowered by more than half, maybe, given the first year. So it's tricky. It's tricky waters. And here's the other thing. Barkley is a beloved figure in the organization. John Mara thinks highly of him. Obviously, Joe Schoen likes him. The coaching staff likes him. Barkley is well respected in the locker room. And you just sit there and you wonder and you say, hey, the longer this goes on, other players are going to take note of this. And what effect is that going to have on them if they see the Giants, not doing anything with a guy that they supposedly, have a high regards for? It's a business. I get it. I do not think the Giants are purposely jerking Barkley around. But look, I also think Barkley's got to be realistic here. So, I understand he wants the most money he can get. We all do. We all want more than what we're probably worth. I'm included in that. And I've yet to meet anybody who will take less than what they think they're worth. But that said, you have to look at the whole picture here. And the reality of the situation is this: running backs, the market's just not, there for the running backs this year. Plus, you throw in the fact that the draft class is loaded with running back prospects. I mean, you could get a decent running back as late as day 3. And the odds are just against Barkley. I mean, I get it. He's a unique talent. He's a special talent. He's been the face of the franchise. I get all that. But, when you have an injury history and you're getting up there in age, he's what, 26 now, 27, something like that. There comes a time when you say, okay, look, we've got to look at how we're allocating our resources, and we can't go crazy on a position that generally has a short shelf life. So bottom line, folks, I think it's going to be a while before this situation with Barkley gets resolved. I would not be surprised if it runs into the deadline in the summer, just before training camp. I think that's when he will probably end up signing the tag, absent, again, a new deal somehow miraculously developing. And then it'll be business as usual. But in the meantime, I don't know if you would say it would be a distraction. I'm sure the question will be asked on a regular basis, what the status is with Barkley. And I'm sure, Brian Dable's answer is going to be, we can only coach the guys that are here, very similar to what he did last year when Kadarius Toney didn't show up initially for the start of the offseason program. So it's going to be up to Dable really to manage this and not let it turn into a circus or a distraction for the team. And I don't think it will. I think, Dable is pretty good with managing that stuff. But nonetheless, this is a interesting storyline to follow, and we'll see. Again, that's not to say that the two sides can't come to an agreement before that, but I have a feeling that it's not going to happen. And the longer this goes on, the more concerning it can be. So, all right, folks, coming up next, we're going to talk about some other nuggets to come out of the first day of the league meetings. We have thoughts on Leonard Williams. We still have thoughts about Odell Beckham Jr. That topic came up. And of course, the center position. All that's coming up on the Locked On Giants podcast. Don't go anywhere. Hey, Giant fans, the tournament is heating up, and right now there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to the point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Hey, Giant fans, thanks so much for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen or watch every day. Now make your second listen or watch the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast with the Draft Dudes. From free agency to the draft to salary cap management and more, NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise on their show, available every Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Thank you so much for taking part of your day to spend with me. I appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. And thank you all again for another fantastic month of March. I mean, the numbers again are through the roof. And I can't thank you all enough for tuning in and checking out the podcast. I know I get a lot of comments from folks over on the YouTube channel, including some fans of other teams who found us and who like the podcast. So let me just take a moment to just thank you all for tuning in, and also to those of you who are listening on our audio platforms. Thank you. I it's that simple. Thank you. You have a choice. There are a lot of Giant podcasts out there, and I appreciate that you make the Locked On Giants podcast one of your choices to listen to. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Before I get into the rest of the notes I have from the NFL owners meeting, special announcement. That's right, folks. I did it. I took the plunge. I did a mock draft, a 7-round Giants only mock draft. And I'm going to unveil that to you this week. probably on Wednesday's show, depending on what news comes out of the owners' meetings on Tuesday. But I do have the mock draft done. Spoiler alert, I use Pro Football Focus's simulator to do it. And my mock draft received a grade of B+. And I feel pretty good about it. I mean, I did this mock draft over the weekend. I taped the show already. And I feel pretty good about the mock draft I did. Now, some of you will probably hate it and some of you will probably like it. Probably most of you will find, parts of it are really good and parts of it are not good. But hey, listen, it's all done for fun. I told you that at some point I was going to do it. I've done it. You'll have your chance to mock away. That's what I always say, right? So that is coming up. Again, it's tentatively scheduled for Wednesday's show, depending again on what comes out of the owners' meeting. Also coming up this week on the Locked On Giants podcast, I'm getting back with Damian Parson of Locked On NFL Draft. I know we had him on the show a few weeks ago, actually, and a lot of you love Damian. He gave some great names to keep an eye on. This was before the combine, actually. And Damian's going to come back on with me, and we're going to kind of catch up and see, whose stock is up, whose stock is down, how free agency has kind of, influenced the draft, if at all. So, Damian's really good. If you haven't checked out that show, I want to say it was before the combine. So it would have been like the last week of February, beginning of March. Definitely check it out. So anyway, let's get back to some nuggets from the NFL owners meeting on Monday. One of the things that I know I've been beating the drum about, and I think a lot of people have been, is Leonard Williams's cap number, $32 million. And that is currently the highest cap figure on the Giants. And quite frankly, it's a number that I just do not see how the Giants can carry that number. As I mentioned in the previous segment, the Giants, according to Over the Cap, have less than $600,000 in effective cap space, which, by the way, for those of you wondering what effective cap space is, effective cap space just simply means the amount of room they have to fit guys under the top 51 rule, which is currently in effect right now and is in effect and will remain in effect until the first week of the season. So the Giants got to come up with a way to get money. The reporters that were on site, based on the tweets I saw, basically asked about a pay cut for Leonard Williams. And no disrespect if that was the question that was asked, but that wasn't really the right question to ask. Leonard Williams is not going to take a pay cut, nor should he be asked to take a pay cut. Now, I know why. I know the logic behind the question. Usually when a guy is coming off of an injury, an injury-filled season, the inclination is to say to him, hey, we need you to give back a little bit of money. Like it's the guy's fault he got injured, right? I never understood that, but it's a business decision. That said, Leonard Williams did not have his season end because of injury. Yes, he missed time, the first games of his career, because of injuries, neck, knee, but he had all kinds of things going on. But he didn't have his season end. He gutted through a lot of those injuries. So to kind of sit there and then expect him to take a pay cut, not happening. If I'm Leonard Williams, I say, not happening. All right, now, what do you do about the number? Well, you can obviously carry it, which might be the case here. Or if you're the Giants and you still think that Leonard Williams can give you some good football, the only other option here, folks, is to extend him. Now, I wouldn't extend him 5 years. I probably wouldn't go 4 years. I might do maybe 3 years, make it a true 2-year extension with a third-year option or a dummy year. But that's the only way you're going to get that number down. Now, I don't know if Leonard Williams's camp is open to that, but certainly, if they were to rip up the contract now and say, okay, Leonard, we're going to extend you. We're going to give you the same amount of money you would do this year, whether it be, with base salary, with the signing bonus. However, there are ways to make up the money that he would have made this year. And, that's going to help us with our cap. That's what I think the Giants need to do. Now, have they reached out to Leonard's agents? I know there were discussions at the combine. What those discussions were about, obviously, I don't know. But I would not be surprised if they talked about a possible extension, because Leonard's not taking a pay cut, and I don't think he should. Again, it's not like he's coming off of a torn ACL that knocked out his whole season. So that being said, where are the Giants going to get the money for the for their draft class and to make other moves? Some possibilities, and I don't think they want to do this next one, but Adoree Jackson is always a possibility. Although, again, the cornerback class is so deep. If you're the Giants, you probably don't go in that direction. Do you look to do something with Dexter Lawrence? Yeah, that would be one of my targets. Now, how tricky that's going to be, I don't know, because, you see what Deron Payne got down in Washington. You see, what interior defensive linemen are getting. Might be tricky to do. Not impossible, but it can certainly be done. You would hope, going back to the last segment when I talked about Saquon Barkley on the 10 million tag, that something would get worked out there. But I don't feel optimistic right now that something will get worked out there. So where is the money coming from? Do the Giants maybe go to Tyrod Taylor and see if they could get some money there? Now that they have Daniel Jones under contract, I don't know. That's a possibility. Do they look to extend Andrew Thomas at this point? I don't think that will be the case. So I'm not sure where the money's going to come from, but Giants are going to have to come up with it somewhere. Maybe, I don't know, Graham Gano, maybe he's a possibility. I don't know. I mean, again, the logical answers, I think, and I'm just going to take a look here just to make sure that I got them all covered. So the logical answers would be Leonard, who has the 32.26 million cap hit, and absent an extension, which I think is the way they're still going to go, you can maybe get money back there. Adoree Jackson has a cap hit of looks like 19 million. So maybe you do something there, lower his base salary for another year. That's certainly a possibility. But, if you're going to go cornerback in this class, do you really want to go that direction? Dexter Lawrence, like I said, he is the fourth highest cap hit of the Giants at 12.407. That's a place they can definitely go and get money from if they can work out a long-term deal. And then you've got Andrew Thomas, who, he's got a 10.29 million cap hit, but his base salary, according to this, is only at 1.01 million. So the base salary or that cap hit is mostly the prorated signing bonus of 5.2 and a roster bonus of 4 million. So you're not going to get a whole lot there. So the other place I'm looking at here potentially is Mark Lewinsky. Mark Lewinsky has a 4.65 million base and 8.35 million cap hit. That's a possibility, but just really, really difficult here. There's just, I'm not sure where it's going to come from, but I do know this much. I would be absolutely shocked if the Giants just flat out cut Leonard Williams. I don't think they would do that. I know some people have said that's the answer. I don't agree. That would make a huge hole on the roster. And if nothing else, we learned last year when they had to cut James Bradbury, you don't want to create crater-sized holes on your roster, which cutting Leonard Williams, I think, would. So where it's coming from, I don't know, but something to keep an eye on for sure. Definitely. All right. One other topic I want to touch on really quickly in this segment is the center position. And the center position, as we know, the Giants might as well just take a billboard out in Times Square and say they're drafting a center. I mean, I think we all know that's where this is headed, right? I don't think it's going to be first round. I think second round. Spoiler alert, I do have a center in my second round of my mock draft, which we'll find out about this week. All right, so regarding center, Joe Schoen told reporters that, obviously they're going to look at potential veterans. On the roster, they had Ben Bredesen, who played 30 snaps at center last year. He also mentioned Jack Anderson, who 2 years ago played 60 snaps at center. And he mentioned Shane Lemieux, who thus far has not played any snaps at center in a regular season game. Not very attractive options. Now, that said, you think back to a few years ago, Nick Gates stepped in and had to start someplace. John Feliciano last year wasn't really much of a center, and he stepped in. I keep saying this, and I will say it again. Draft a center. Get somebody who has done it. Enough with the guard to center conversions. Just get a center. Now, here's what I think the Giants might be looking to do. The Indianapolis Colts, there's been reports that they might be looking to move on from their center, Ryan Kelly. There have been reports that they've been looking to trade Ryan Kelly, and if they can't, they will release him. I have a gut feeling that Joe Schoen is keeping a close eye on that situation, because if Ryan Kelly does become available, that would be the answer for me. You put him next to Glowinski, who, remember, the two of them played together with the Colts. And that would be how I would go if I needed a stopgap situation, which they obviously do. So if you can get a veteran center like a Ryan Kelly, and then you draft a center, say in the second round, you can develop that guy. Take your time with developing him, getting him ready. And, meanwhile, you've got the veteran there, and you can groom the young guy to eventually take over for full time. If not, like by the second half of the season, which is where you generally tend to see a shift and whatnot. So that's what I think the Giants are going to do at center. I mean, Shane Lemieux, I don't think he's going to be an option. I mean, the guy, hard worker, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. Bredesen can do it, but I would like to see him kind of stay at left guard, even though I know if Josh Azudu was healthy, Josh Azudu is probably going to be the favorite at left guard. Jack Anderson, I could see as a backup, at guard. So I don't know. I'm not crazy about the options that are currently on the roster. Let's put it that way. Of course, my opinion doesn't matter. It's what the coaches think. And if the coaches think they have the answer on the roster, then more power to them. But bottom line, folks, I do think the Giants are going to draft the center. I think we can all agree on that. So, all right, coming up next, the topic that refuses to die, Odell Beckham Jr. What's the latest? Stick around and I'll tell you after this. Hey, Giant fans, the Built March Madness bracket is here, but only for the remainder of this week. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now's your time to make it count. Go to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorites. I voted already for Mint Brownie Puff, absolute favorite, a limited time offering, which I was able to get not too long ago. And I think I have like 2 bars left. They're that good. Anyway, which bar or puff will you be voting for? Support your favorite at builtmarchmadness.com and be automatically entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built, and 1 lucky Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to their door. Vote every day in March. That means this week is the last week to put your vote. So don't forget, cast your vote. And also, you can still save 15% off on your first order with the promo code LOCK15 at built.com. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and we're talking about some of the nuggets that came out of the first day of the league meetings down in Arizona. And before I get to this next topic, just a quick note. Some of you have sent me in questions to include in the podcast. I still have them and I will get to them. I will insert them into a podcast at some point. Whenever I have an opening, I'll put them in, but please know that I have them and I'm acknowledging them here. And if you want to send me a question, obviously you can do so anytime. The information's in the show notes. You can send them to lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com. You can also send them to me on my Instagram account at Patty Traina, PATTITRAINA. You can send them to me via Twitter. My Twitter handle is right there below. Email me, lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com. So plenty of ways to keep in touch if you want to get a question in. And I will work them in into wherever I can here on the podcast. So thank you in advance. Now, let's get back to the nuggets from the NFL owners meeting. And the story that refuses to die. The Giants are still interested in Odell Beckham Jr. Now, look, I understand to a degree what's going on here. There's sentimental feelings, obviously. Odell was a first-round pick for this team. For a number of years, he was the team. He was really the only thing I think a lot of people had to get excited about. But folks, it's time to move on. Because here's the thing. Odell recently tweeted that $4 million a year isn't enough. I just got through saying the Giants don't have any money right now to sign him, even if they wanted to. Wouldn't the Giants be better off at this point? And this is just a hypothetical question. You might agree, you might not agree. Wouldn't the Giants be better off at this point just drafting a guy who put him on a rookie contract that's going to cost a heck of a lot less than $4 million per, and going in that direction? I think so. I mean, no disrespect to Odell. He, had a great workout, which, by the way, was conducted, as I understand it, without any football gear on, with minimal resistance from, would-be defenders, So I don't know, folks. I don't understand why this story, well, I do understand why, but the story continues to swirl. And it could just be, John Mara, who made the comments about, leaving the door open, just being politically correct. I don't know. Instead of saying, hey, we're closing the door on this, we're moving on. Because you never want to burn bridges. And there is, the ownership does still have an affection for Odell. But at this point, you got to move on. And Odell's going to help some team. The Jets are reportedly interested in him for Aaron Rodgers if that trade is ever made. But at some point, you got to move on if you're the Giants. And if you look at what the Giants have done in building up this roster, and this is important, the approach the Giants have taken is they made a couple of splashes. You can consider Bobby Okereke a splash. You can consider Darren Waller, the acquisition of Darren Waller, a splash. If you want to be technical, you could say Nunes Roches is a little bit of a splash, although albeit not on the same level as an Okereke. But for the most part, the Giants have been filling in the roster with low risk, high reward guys on 1-year deals. So if you look at the receivers, Paris Campbell, 1-year deal. Jamison Crowder, 1-year deal. Jeff Smith, 1-year deal. Sterling Shepard, Isaiah Hodgins, 1-year deals. Darius Slayton, a 2-year deal. They still have Colin Johnson under contract. Giants have about 13 receivers right now, I think, under contract. David Sills is another guy who's under contract. So it's not the number per se. It's not like, if they add one more, it's a big deal. They also have Wan'Dale Robinson, who I forgot to mention, who, by the way, is there's still some question as to whether Robinson is going to be ready to go for the start of the season as he recovers from that ACL injury. But with Odell, if he's wanting more than $4 million a year, don't you think that money would be better spent elsewhere? I mean, cornerback, wouldn't you like to get a better cornerback situation back there? Build up that depth. Yes, you've got the draft, but would you want a veteran back there? Would you want maybe another, interior offensive lineman? We talked about center. We talked about, guard. Would you want more depth at, I don't know, edge rusher, which is kind of thin right now? You've got Thibodeau and you've got Azeez Ojulari, and they brought back Jihad Ward, but do they know what they have in Ellerson Smith? Do they have enough as far as edge rushers go? I don't think they do. The point being is, Odell, like I said, he's going to help somebody. Still probably a very good player. But I just think that ship has sailed for this team. And, if you're the Giants, okay, I get it. You don't want to come right out and say, guys, we're moving on. That's in the past. It was great while it lasted. I get that. You never want to burn a bridge. But if you think about it, it really doesn't make sense. And, John Mara, in his quotes to the media, said, look, if Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen can make it work, I'm in favor of it. If they can make it work, then I trust what they're doing, but I don't see how it would work. Not just in terms of the money, but in terms of it kind of goes against what they've been doing to build up this roster. So that's my take on that. They obviously, it's their opinion and their opinion, is what matters. But it just kind of goes against the grain as to what they're doing, which is to build through the draft and use free agency sparingly. So Odell, if you sign him, that's a splash. And it just doesn't fit into what they have done. So we'll see if they pursue it or what happens. But I suspect that there's always going to be that link between the Giants and Odell until Odell signs someplace. And he will. Will he sign with the Jets? That would be where my money would be right now. But I don't think he's going to sign here. I'd be surprised. If he does, welcome back, Odell. So anyway, that is going to do it for us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And again, coming up probably tomorrow, depending on what comes out of the owners' meetings today, Tuesday. But if we don't have anything to talk about from that, I will unveil my mock draft. Yeah, I'm going to unveil that mock draft. It's a full Giants only 7-round mock draft, but either way, it's coming out this week. So get ready to walk away. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for me. We will see you tomorrow.